Have you ever wondered how ancient civilizations were able to create amazing wonders such as Stonehenge, invent tools for survival, or migrate across continents, and your organization struggles to create a compelling vision, or your company isn't connecting the resources they have to those in need? While we may not be able to say with absolute certainty how these amazing feats were accomplished, it's fairly certain they were done by human hands, and likely not just one. These feats were accomplished by eliciting the vision and spirit of a people and engaging the whole community. Much like in today's world, whole system transformation. According to Katie and Dana Miller, whole system transformation is more than just a change that affects the entire system. It means the entire system is involved in creating itself anew. Over the next few minutes, I'll review a number of whole system change methods that can be utilized to overcome the challenges you may have experienced in the past and support you in your quest of whole system transformation. The first systems I'm going to look at include appreciative inquiry, open space technology, dynamic planning charrettes, future search, and graphic facilitation. My selection for three additional methods came after further research. We'll come back to this. So what did I want to find out? Well, I wanted to develop selection criteria, support me on my OD practitioner journey, and understand how I might be able to utilize these methods effectively. My method analysis included first reviewing the article Mastering Change by Katie, Matthews, and Matthews to familiarize myself with the design elements that can be used to analyze a change method. Then took a deep dive into the first 5 assigned methods from the Change Handbook as my primary source document, using the design elements as a way to investigate the methods. Used lots of post-it notes to capture my data, noting the initial of the method, the design element I thought it corresponded to, and the information in order to catalog my ideas. I first noticed that the change methods we were assigned fell under 3 of the 6 broader categories: adaptable, meaning they can be used in a variety of purposes, planning, structuring, or improving, planning, helping people shape their future, or supportive, enhancing other methods. My first criteria was to look at some change methods from structuring, assisting with redefining relationships, or improving methods that increase effectiveness, to see if there might be any I want to explore. My final criteria then looked at flexibility. Could they be used in organizations and communities so I can use them now and in the future? Simplicity of design. And then the Change Handbook also references Gardner's multiple intelligences. So I wanted to explore whether I had all of those 8 intelligences represented. Now, you may be saying, whoa, wait a second, where are these structuring methods? You'll notice that I didn't choose any. So there's a little bit of science and a little bit of heart. Upon my review, I didn't find structuring methods that fit all my criteria, so I opted for an additional adaptable method of World Cafe. Additionally, I had heard about World Cafe from colleagues in the past who said it was life-changing. It piqued my interest, so I threw it on the list. I then followed the same analysis as I described earlier, and about 1,000 post-it notes later, I began my affinity diagram. I started out by placing the post-its up on the board and started grouping similar words. Once I had all of them up for a particular design element, I then started circling the groupings that I saw. So what you're seeing here is an image of the purpose diagram. Note that because I had so many post-its, I was only able to do one design element at a time. A couple of examples of patterns that I saw with purpose include responsibility, action plans, common ground, and then seeing patterns. I then didn't just look for those smaller categories. I looked at categories of clusters. So you can see this particularly in the journey map. I saw things about preparation, the overall event itself, steps for the event, implementation, and then sustaining. So what worked and what didn't? Well, first of all, prep. I just dove in and started writing on Post-its and pretty soon had nowhere to go with them. Had to purchase a whiteboard, And then later some whiteboard markers. Can you have too many Post-its? I'm not sure. I recognize that I may have missed out on opportunities to see patterns across the design elements, however, because I didn't have them all on the board at the same time. And then use of color. The use of color that I currently have is not purposeful. So that may have been helpful because I ended up having multiple colored Post-it notes within even a method, which became a little bit confusing. The benefits, though, I saw the whole picture, at least for a design element, definitely saw patterns, and then writing the patterns down crystallized what I was seeing. So how did I begin my mind map? Well, I sat there with a blank screen and did what anyone would do in my situation. I watched another YouTube video. I did reference Tony Buzan's mind mapping video to get a better understanding of the process. And a couple of things popped out. Using curved lines versus straight lines, reflecting how our brain thinks, one word per branch to allow more associations, and then use of color and image to support the learning. So this is where I ended up with my final mind map. You'll notice that despite hearing use of color and imagery, I don't have a lot there. So what I ended up with was images that I thought I could draw. In contrast to the affinity diagram, which started out with very specific ideas and then looked to more broad categories, this started out with broader categories, larger, such as starting out with whole system change methods at the center, and as a whole. Then radiating out from that are the 6 elements. And then from there it became a little tricky because I needed to create connections from this higher level to those smaller groups. So for example, looking at the systems branch, a couple of things popped out. So I knew that the elements fit into either communities, organizations, or both, so I saw that as setting. Thinking about how many people to invite and who, those were related somehow. So what popped out was attendees. And then finally in this section I added some words that came up time and time again, such as complexity and opposition. I now recognize that those might, the first branch might be conditions. So looking at this again, I'm seeing additional connections. Moving to purpose, here is where I started to see a number of connections. So I started to see these action words, which led me to a couple of simple things. See, access, create, challenge. So access was one that really popped out for me. Accessing the inherent motivation, creativity, into ideas, intelligence of the participants. In a sense, harnessing the human spirit and collective intelligence of the system, similar to what we saw in these ancient civilizations. So it was really about seeing and doing things differently. Next was journey. These were really almost a direct translation of those broad categories of prep, event, and post-event. So a couple of things that popped out. While preparation wasn't always discussed in length, the theme of commitment came through very heavily, if not about success factors, but about when not to use the method because commitment wasn't there. I also noticed the verb reflection came through in both the steps of the various events as well as post-event implementation, particularly in sustaining. Evidence. My first 2 branches here refer to 2 of the 3 requirements for sound design noted on the Mastering Change article, those being theory and examples. I wasn't able to suss out a lot of information about experience and knowledge, so further exploration there. A couple of patterns here, again noting the vast array of different settings where these have worked. And then the theory that stuck out to me was particularly those tribal practices that were referenced. Again, relating to the pattern I noticed earlier, thinking about what we already have within us, some of those innate understandings we have about how to release the potential energy of a group. And then values. In looking at the values section, a couple of ahas. Trust both the people, the participants who are coming, that they will create what the system needs, but also trusting the process. Understanding that chaos may be part of the creative process. And then all of these principles seem to be aimed at creating safety for the participants, the system itself, and the integrity of the process. And then looking at models, because I literally drew an illustration of the models, this was interesting, so I broke it down into first words and shapes, and then looking at what those shapes represented, seeing a lot of arrows indicating relationship or direction, and circles conveying multiple meanings like the notion of iteration or repetition, community, and even boundaries. My final and significant learning from this process came from the book Game Storming, recognizing that the values, journey, purpose, and rules about timing, who, how might be invited, were about creating a world and agreement to enter into the world. By entering that different world, as noted in the book Game Storming, the rules of ordinary life are temporarily suspended, creating a safe space where players can engage in behavior that may be risky or even uncomfortable. What's different here in these change methods is that while there is a conclusion to the event itself, in most of the methods, the trick is to be able to take some of those rules, artifacts, or feelings from this alternate world and bring them back to our own world to sustain change. So a couple of things in terms of future applications, I looked at it as both personal and my OD practice. So a couple of ideas. The stars indicate places where I've seen it be effective, and then some ideas for future exploration. And in terms of overall what I saw through this process, definitely a better understanding of the change methods, a new use of these affinity diagramming and mind mapping tools, and certainly some ideas for further exploration. So areas, change methods I want to dive into further, as well as some of the history of OD. I did reference a number of videos as well as